When video game developers find a niche that works well for them, they tend to stick to it. This means that they can, in theory, be expected to provide a base quality for any games they release in future, and also that fans will know what typically to expect from them. Sometimes it's necessary to break out of the samey mold though, whether higher-ups are forcing a project or someone just wants to exercise their creative expression, so occasionally studios will release something that seems utterly uncharacteristic. They may even be so different that many players won't register that the action-packed movie tie-in they're currently playing was developed by the same folks that created their favourite iconic RPG series. There are several developers who've broken free from their comfort zone over the years, and today we're taking a look at a few games that come from places you may not expect, based on the bulk of the studio's history. Prepare to be amazed, as I am the constantly surprising Ashton from Triple Jump, and these are 10 video games developed by unexpected studios. Number 10. Vampyr. Don't Nod. Paris-based studio Don't Nod has made a significant name for themselves with narrative-based adventure games, including Life is Strange and Tell Me Why. They also developed Remember Me, a middling title which ironically everyone forgot about, but as a large part of that involved jacking into people's minds, which seems similar to supernatural abilities they would touch on in their later protagonists, we're going instead with something a little farther outside of their wheelhouse: Vampyr. As players begin the game, they find themselves waking up in a horrible body pit, discovering very soon after that they've been turned into a vampire after chowing down on the neck of their sister who's come to search for them. From this point on, protagonist Jonathan Reed constantly has to make tough decisions to try to navigate being both a doctor and a creature who relies on harming others in order to survive. If players want to keep Jonathan on a path that steers him clear of Hippocratic Oath violations, it's possible to complete the game without harming anyone, outside of those in obligatory cutscenes, but doing so will keep them from accessing their powerful abilities. With its moral tone, it's not the furthest from Don't Nod's normal fare, but the historic setting is certainly unexpected. Number 9. Black. Criterion Games. Since their inception in 1996, Criterion Games have been creating experiences that pertain to vehicles, whether they be of the land, air or sea variety. But in 2001, they became most well known for the popular Burnout series, and would later be responsible for quite a few of the Need for Speed games as well. Right in the middle of all this hot pursuiting and takedowning though, they ended up taking a hard left and steering straight into first-person shooterville with their 2006 title Black. In this drastic departure from the world of motorsport, players step into the shoes of Sergeant First Class Jack Keller, a CIA agent who's being interrogated about arms dealings and possible terrorist organisations, and who has to comply if he wants to avoid being convicted himself. The rest of the game plays out as a series of flashbacks, as Keller works to chase down the organisation known as the Seventh Wave, blasting his way through a variety of locales and eventually meeting up with a couple of helpful allies, Makava and Solomon. Thankfully, the game was received fairly well overall, as it would be really embarrassing if this had been the one game that caused the studio to crash and burn. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for some of their later titles. Number 8. Little Computer People. Activision. Nowadays, Activision is known for Call of Duty, their merger with Blizzard, and horrible business practices, but they've stuck to publishing in recent years, as opposed to developing. Back in the 80s though, this was a different story, as the studio both developed and published many games. Things have, obviously, changed quite a lot since then, but they started out making titles that leaned mainly towards those of the sporty or aerial persuasion, though they did create the enormously popular Pitfall during that time as well. Something that's completely different from anything they tended to do then, or now for that matter, is Little Computer People, a precursor to The Sims that entails less interaction. Released in 1985, this voyeur simulator plops players down in front of a house that has one entire wall shaved off of it and lets them observe the pixelated occupant as they go about various tasks over the course of their day. Much like The Sims, Little Computer People allows players to issue basic commands as well as interact directly with their person, so they can engage in poker games and present giving, and can even be contacted back, with the AI writing a letter telling the player how they're feeling. I wonder what they think of Activision currently. Oh god, we can't show that! Jesus, such language! Number 7. Hi-Fi Rush. Tango Gameworks. Initially founded in 2010, Tango Gameworks was established by Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami, and has arguably hardly been around long enough to situate themselves firmly in a single genre, despite the pedigree pointing towards something pretty obvious. As it happens though, 3 of their 4 currently released games are decidedly on the horror-y side of things, which makes Hi-Fi Rush stand out all the more. This game turned out to be a surprise in many ways, not just because of how it was released, but due to how darned good it was as well, and it carved out a space for itself in the rhythm action action genre very soon after it showed up. The story follows Chai, a young man with dreams of becoming a rock star who shows up at Vandelay Technologies in order to be fitted with a cybernetic arm. However, things don't go according to plan while he's there, and instead, Chai becomes one with the music player that he brought with him, which then allows him to sync up with the world and move to its beat. With its flashy aesthetic and catchy tunes, it's a far cry from The Evil Within. Though I can't be the only one who desperately needs to know what a mashup would look like. Number 6. Mini Ninjas, IO Interactive. With both the Hitman franchise and the much less popular Kane and Lynch games under their belt, IO Interactive aren't especially known for their games having a lot of colour to them, unless they're accompanied by a good bit of fog and several death traps. That is, unless you're looking at their 2009 title, Mini Ninjas, which, in contrast, is about as saturated in colour as you can get. As players make their way through this bright action adventure, they initially take control of Hiro, a young ninja, as he sets off in order to find his 5 fellow students and lead them on a journey to restore the peace in their forest. Their aim is to turn all the aggressive samurai animals back into their normal selves, as they've been corrupted by the return of evil warlord Ashida. Once Hiro's friends join him, players can swap to them at any time they wish in order to utilise their special combat strengths and make traversal a little bit easier for themselves as they progress through and liberate all of the area's fortresses. IO are going for something a bit more kid-friendly with this title, and it's safe to say they succeeded, but it's still quite a surprise given their grittier origins. Number 5. Monster Hunter Diary Poka Poka Iru Village. From Software. What do you think of when you hear From Software? Is it cutesy Monster Hunter spin-offs that have Hello Kitty cosmetic items and real-life merch? It isn't? Oh, well, fair enough, I suppose. Surprisingly, though, it's exactly what we have in store for you now, as the masters of dark RPGs and Armored Cores opted for a change of pace in 2010 and bought out Monster Hunter Diary Poka Poka Iru Village to the people of Japan. In this adventure title, players are in control of a pack of felines, the bipedal cats seen throughout the series, and will order them around, guiding them on the various quests they receive from fellow villagers. The art style is one that's not only overly saccharine for the Soulsborne folks, but the Monster Hunter series as well, as even though some of the animals can be on the cute side, they definitely lean towards realism, as opposed to the cartoonish style seen in this title. It's also more focused on the felines themselves, instead of the eponymous monsters, as players can dress their pals and manage their village. Still, if you've ever wanted the Dark Souls of cat games, I guess this is as close as it gets. Number 4. Metroid Other M, Team Ninja. We're sticking with the concept of long-running series made by Unlikely Studios for a bit longer as we shift our attention to 2010 Wii title Metroid Other M, developed by Dead or Alive, Ninja Gaiden and Neo veterans Team Ninja. Placed between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion in the chronology, Metroid Other M places a strong emphasis on its story, and once again sees players take control of bounty hunter Samus Aran as she explores a derelict space station known as the Bottle Ship. While doing so, meets with and saves a platoon of Galactic Federation soldiers, a couple of whom she knows, and so she decides to stay on board in order to assist them. As the story progresses, there are several flashbacks which expand on the bounty hunter's past, and players will also find themselves switching between views as they can flip to a first-person perspective in order to lock onto a target manually with the Wii remote, in theory. We all know how well that usually worked. Despite Samus and her characterization being a primary part of the title, neither were especially well received, but Team Ninja seems to have learnt their lesson and have steered clear of anything similar in the years since, which makes this particular title an even stranger standout amongst all the things they've done. Number 3. Alien Isolation, Creative Assembly. Creative Assembly have been around since the late 80s, and though some of their early video game offerings were things like Rugby World Cup 95 and Stunt Car Racer, they've been focusing on the Total War series and real-time strategy for the majority of the past 2 decades. However, their 2014 title breaks out of this medieval melee mold and ventures far into the future, where space exploration is rampant, and the ones now doing the killing are not warriors with poleaxes and longbows, but monsters whose structural perfection is matched only by their hostility. That's right, these folks took a break from Total War to bring us something completely different. Alien Isolation. This atmospheric survival horror, set in the film world, which was styled with the extremely biological artwork of H.R. Geiger, follows Ellen Ripley's daughter Amanda as she boards Sevastopol Station in search of the Nostromo's flight recorder. Unfortunately, the place has fallen victim to a terminal case of murderous aliens, and she ends up having to avoid them, rogue androids, and nasty human beings in order to escape. You could say, given their killing efficiency, this game is still a total war of sorts. It's just that it pits the xenomorphs against the humans, and in this case, it's more of a total massacre. Number 2, Lemmings, DMA Design. Back before Rockstar became the studio we're familiar with today, they were known as DMA Design, and especially in the early years, focused primarily on side-scrolling shooters. But starting in 1991, before they entertained the youth while simultaneously traumatizing their parents with the original Grand Theft Auto, they were responsible for a wholly different series that went by the name of Lemmings. Over the course of this puzzle platformer series, players guide the titular Lemmings, who, much like their real-life significantly less brightly coloured counterparts are wrongly rumoured to do, follow each other through hell and high water and off of massive drops until they reach the door at the end of each level. A certain percentage of these small creatures must be saved in order to progress, and players can also assign certain lemmings jobs, which will allow them to alter the landscape, redirect the rest of the herd, or otherwise create a safe path for their brethren. The game received loads of praise, as well as expansion packs and sequels over the following years, but not much has been heard from the blue-cloaked critters recently. Seems as though GTA's success is the only thing the Lemmings couldn't follow to the next level. And number 1, The Dog Island, Yuke's. With the slew of WWE titles and fighting games they've developed since the early 2000s, along with the most recent title, AEW Fight Forever, it's fair to say that Yuke's has a type. You know what's about as far away from all that fighting as you can get though? Comically proportioned puppies. Yet somehow, that's exactly what the studio offered with their 2007 game, The Dog Island. And somehow, it wasn't their first time jumping into the world of dog ownership, as they are also responsible for The Dog Happy Life. However, the latter is mostly just a clone of Nintendogs, whereas The Dog Island is a bit on the stranger side. This pooch-filled paradise doesn't try to simulate what it's like to own a dog, but instead takes the form of an adventure game, with players picking their preferred breed and spending some time with their dog family. Before too long though, their mischievous sibling gets themselves into trouble, and the player has to embark on a voyage to find the famous Dr. Potan in order to nurse them back to health. Unfortunately, they get lost at sea and wash up on the titular island, where they join forces with a mysterious creature named Potassi and proceed to traverse the many regions of the island. Now that's what I call unexpected.